Hello, good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Highland. I'm the marketing and box office manager for the Annie Russell Theater at Rollins College, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to a chat with Beth Lincks. We are so excited to have you here today. Hopefully, by this point in the Alumni Weekend festivities, you've had a chance to connect with what's going on campus and watched As It Is in Heaven. We have a recording of a live preview performance that was taken at the Annie Russell just a few weeks ago, and we've had it available this weekend. If you haven't had a chance to see the play, email boxoffice@rollins.edu. I'll hop on over and send you a link right after this program is finished, and you'll have until midnight tonight to go and watch the production. As It Is in Heaven is written and directed by Rollins alumna Beth Lincks. Her pen name is Arlene Hutton. We were able to have her back to campus this semester through the generous support of the Thomas P. Johnson Distinguished Visiting Artist Program. Wild. It's Annie's 88th season, and it has been a ride. We had never done a virtual show, and we did a couple of those to kick off this year. Like many theaters, learned the ins and outs of that world. We did a play on Rollins tennis courts in November, small distanced outdoor audiences, and then finally in February, we were able to return to the Annie, again, small distanced masked, wonderfully supportive audiences. Annie's 88th season was special even before it was pandemic special, and it's because we made a commitment to celebrate women's voices this year. Every title we produced on both our main stage and our student-directed series was written by a woman. Naturally, pre-pandemic, we reached out to Beth Lincks and asked her if she would direct her own title on the Annie stage. In fact, meeting up with Beth was one of the last normal things we did in March of 2020, and got to introduce her to our students ever so briefly. She worked first virtually with our students, then in person. She's going to talk about that. So enough of me. It's time for me to go. It's time for me to introduce you to two folks that I've really enjoyed getting to spend a bit of time with this past week, this past semester. Beth today, a chat with Beth will be facilitated by Rick Stanley. I'm sure he's a friend to some of you watching now. He is also a Rollins alum. He got a scholarship to attend Rollins and study acting. He did 14 plays between his freshman and sophomore year. I don't even know how he managed that. There's no way for a student to do that now. Rick, you'll have to enlighten us. But he did 14 plays in 2 years, was then hired to go on the road, left Rollins early, performed all over the country, lived in New York for 20 years, and then moved back to Orlando in the early 1990s. He was in the founding season of Mad Cow Theater, a resident artist there for 10 years, performed at Orlando Shakes, Orlando Repertory Theater, many more of your favorite local theaters. Rick's husband also went to Rollins, and together they own the Scott Laurent Collection on Park Avenue. The connection, Beth and Rick are great friends. They met working on an Annie show, of course, called The Imaginary Invalid. I'm going to bring them up in just a few minutes. I want to encourage you to type in the, exactly what I was going to ask, and Blair Johnson appears. I was going to ask you to please interact with us in the chat. We'd love to hear your comments and questions. I have the ability to bring them up for all to see. Blair, beloved member of our Annie family. So please do chime in. Rick will get to your questions if and when there's time. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Rick Stanley and Beth Lincks.
Hey!
Hey!
There we are.
Here we are. Chelsea, thank you for that great introduction.
Wonderful introduction. Thank you, Chelsea. I have a first question for Beth that we didn't discuss in our rehearsal, but I've always wondered why the pen name. Why didn't you just write as Beth Lincks? Why did you become Arlene Hutton? So let's start there.
Well, I started writing in around 1994, and I just wrote this one act so I could be in it. and I didn't know that I was going to be anything more than a playwright. And I was performing it. So I told this little theater company, I said, put another name on it. I don't want people to know that I wrote this, because then the casting directors are going to say, oh, well, of course she can act in that. She wrote it. And so they said, what name? And I said, my middle name is Arlene, and my aunt's last name is Hutton, Arlene Hutton. And it took about that long to come up with the name. And if I had been more clever, I would have come up with initials or a genderless name or whatever. But once I had the other name, I could write. And so I don't question it. Beth Lincks is a director, an actor, and a producer, and Arlene Hutton
is a playwright.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wonderful answer. And I didn't really realize that you had written it for yourself. But of course, I've done that before, and I was brazen enough to use my name for both things. Anyway, so when you were at Rollins, obviously you spent a lot of time in the Annie Russell, and you spent a lot of time in the Fred Stone and in the costume shop, I believe.
Yes.
Tell us about those times, and tell us also about what other things you did on campus besides, if you had time to do anything else on campus besides theater.
Well, I had decided at the age of 8 that I wanted to be an actress, and I had always done theater in middle school and high school and some community theater. So when I got to Rollins, which I went to Rollins because of their theater department.
Mm-hmm.
And also I had seen the production of Man of La Mancha when I was a senior in high school that you were in.
Little Barber.
And I saw that, and when I saw that production, Rollins was the only college I applied to. And when I got there, all I wanted to do was be in the theater. It didn't matter what it was. I would do anything backstage. I would build scenery. I ended up doing a lot of work in the costume shop because I already knew how to sew. And then Mary Amlin was running the costume shop and just doing a wonderful job teaching students. And that paid off later with an actual career in costumes. But yeah, and then by the end of my sophomore year, I was running the box office. I did that for 2.5 years. We had summer theater then. I ran the box office for that. So I would just do anything at the theater to be there. Outside the theater, I was a proud Chi Omega. I lived in a sorority house. I didn't participate in anything they were doing because I was always at the theater, but they were very generous and let me do that. So that was my life. I also went outside of campus, and I did 2 plays at what was then Orlando. It's now Orlando Rep, I think. It was the Edith Bush Theater, and I played Joan of Arc there my senior year.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when you left, oh, look at that. So that was a picture of the imaginary invalid with you as my littlest daughter, Louison. And of course, I was in a mask because directed by John Pasquin, it was done as a commedia piece. And all characters who were not honest wore masks. And all the characters who were honest wore just their faces. Dale Amlin's sets and costumes for this piece of theater, I think you'll agree, Beth, were remarkable. Mm-hmm. It was really a wonderful show. So after you left Rollins, you graduated, you went to the Oslo Conservatory, which was being run, I may still be run by Florida State?
Yes, it was the program. My MFA, what I call my Mighty Fine Actor degree, is through Florida State, but I never saw the campus in Tallahassee. The entire program was at the Oslo.
And Sarah, talk about that time and what you did while you were there.
Well, when I was, I was always small and petite, and so when I was at Rollins, I played all the children's parts. When I got to the Oslo, I got bumped up and I played all the servants. I played 9 maids in 2 years, so I actually say I got my my MFA in domestic service. But it was a great time because we were part of the repertory company. We understudied all the roles. We were in rehearsals all the time. At one time, I think we understudied. I think at one time I had 13 roles in my head because we had 5 shows in the rep. I was in, and then I was understudying another 5 shows, and then we had rehearsals for another 3 coming up. So it was a great time. It was a 2-year program then. Now it's 3, and for a master's thesis, she did a 1-person show.
Wow. What did you do?
I did Zelda Fitzgerald, and one of the reasons I chose Zelda was that she had a body of work that I could draw on: diaries, stories, articles, and because I said I don't want to have to write a show because I'm not a writer. Little did I know that,
eventually you would become a writer.
I would be a writer. So I think it's ironic.
Which takes me to the next question, really, which is your first play was called I Dream Before I Take the Stand.
Right.
Please discuss what made you write that play and the experience of putting it down on paper for the first time.
The play started writing itself in my head 2 years before I put my fingers on a keyboard. I was walking in Central Park one day, dressed a certain way, and these lines of dialogue started coming to me. And I kind of maybe jotted them down a little bit, but it rattled around in my head, this idea for a play about a woman who's been sexually assaulted. And 2 years later, I wrote it down, and within a year, we were performing it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with some friends. And it's a 1-act, and it's still my most produced play. It's been done all over the world, translated into a number of languages. Most recently was translated into Kannada, and it was touring festivals in India when the pandemic hit.
Unbelievable, Beth. Can you talk a little bit more about why that subject matter?
Well, it wasn't based on any personal story. It was just about every woman's fear of being raped and being blamed for it. Now, this was 1995, so it was really about blaming and shaming before we were using those words.
So this is way before Me Too.
Way before. I was Me Tooing a long time, much earlier. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I can't believe it's your most performed play. I thought Nibrock would have been, but
that's really second. Yeah, I would have thought that I Dream Before I Take the Stand would be out of date by now, but sadly, it's been more produced than ever.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When you moved to New York, you did a lot of different things. I remember you and I were both there at the same time, and you were doing some work in soap operas as an actor.
It was. Playing,
young teenage girls. And
no, by then I was playing nurses and secretaries.
Oh, nurses. But and our friend Maggie Delgado costumed you in a couple of those shows, I know. But
that picture, yeah.
The question I have about New York City is, hold on, let me look here.
That picture that was just shown is from Another World, where Maggie Delgado was the costume designer. Maggie is a fellow alum of ours who has 5 Emmys for her work in television.
Right. So one of the jobs you got in New York early on was as a dresser, really, for a pretty famous television show called Saturday Night Live. And if I'm not mistaken, you spent 10 years doing that.
I did.
Talk about your SNL days.
There's me with Dana. Well, I started there in '88, which was the second great wave, as I call it. It was Dana Carvey, John Lovitz, who else? Kevin Nealon, Jan Hooks, Nora Dunn, Victoria Jackson. It was just an amazing time to be there. And while I was there, Chris Farley joined, and Will Ferrell. By the time I left, Tina Fey had just started as a writer, but certainly Adam Sandler was there. Tim Meadows was there for a long time. So as a dresser, you're assigned to one person, and you spend your day just taking care of them. And I was Victoria Jackson's dresser for a few years. And when she left, I was in charge of Mike Myers. And that was fun because Mike was always very, very busy in a lot of different sketches. And we got along very well. My last 2 years there, I was in charge of the guest host. So there was me, an assistant dresser, and there I am with Tom, and 2 hair and 2 makeup people. And it's dressing the guest host is kind of like kind of like at a car race where the car pulls into the pit and suddenly everybody is changing the tires and putting gas in and everything. It's like that. You've got 2 minutes to change somebody's clothes with a wig and everything, and then get them to the other side of the studio. And
So it's really about fast changes.
Yes.
That's amazing, because people don't realize, I think many people realize what actually goes into a live television show.
A lot of Velcro.
I would imagine so. So 10 years at Saturday Night Live. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the play that you just directed here at Rollins, As It Is in Heaven. It's a play about Shaker women. I want to know what inspired you to do the research on this play, to write it, and the history of that, because I know you've written another play about Shaker women, but it's in a completely different
century. Yeah.
Century, right. So let's hear about As It Is in Heaven, and then we're going to talk about working at Rollins with students. But first, talk about the play.
Well, As It Is in Heaven was inspired by a play I saw in Edinburgh at the festival in '96 about Scottish farm women. And it was a cast of a lot of women and a lot of long dresses and movement. And I thought, wow, that looks great. What would an American equivalent be? And I had been a guest professor at Berea College. And while I was there, I had gone to the Shaker village at Pleasant Hill, just south of Lexington, Kentucky, which is kind of like a small colonial Williamsburg type thing. You can stay there, you can eat there, and there's interpreters to walk you through all the buildings and things. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, wow, has anybody written about the Shakers? And I started reading and researching, and there had been some fiction about the Shakers, and it's usually the same story about a husband and wife come to the village, endure a winter of hardships, and one of them leaves. And so I started getting interested in the Shaker music and started reading a lot about it. And I got a grant and started going to Shaker museums and conferences. And I cast the play before I wrote it. I thought, I want a big cast. How about 9 women in this play? And who are the 9 women in New York that I want to work with? And so I got them together, and we would sing the Shaker songs, and we would read through diary entries and journals and things like that. And then I started bringing in scenes. So I wrote the play for 9 actors, and then we premiered it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2001, and then brought it to New York 2 weeks later, which happened to be September of 2001. And we opened 3 days after 9/11. And all the critics canceled, the audiences were small, and so on and so forth. We did get to move it to an off-Broadway theater for a few weeks, but it was challenging. But the play has had a life around the country at regional theaters, community theaters, and educational theaters.
There seems to be in your work, and I've seen quite a few of your plays. Even in New York, I got to see one. The woman's point of view is always very clear and very interesting. And the historical aspects of it's just so clear to me after seeing As It Is in Heaven, how much research you actually do. Some playwrights seem to just, write off like water off a duck, but you really pour a lot of intense research into your work.
Yeah, every time I write a historical play, I say never again. This particular play took 2 years of research. Letters to Salah, less, because I based it on one book. Even though it's a Holocaust story, I could have researched it for years, but I was writing about a very specific story with the help of a very specific family. And that
was also a play that was done at Rollins.
Right, a few years.
And I saw it on the Annie stage. Yeah. Oh, here's pictures of Beth working with the students on Letters to Salah.
Right.
Which was, and I think I got to meet the woman who inspired that play.
Yeah, Salah herself, who died about 4 years ago. Salah was able to come see the play, to see the production, as was her daughter, Anne, who's a character in the play. And they got to meet the students afterwards. Anne and I did a talk back. And it was a very exciting time. The play was still in development at that time. So I was, Eric Nightingale, who's in that photo, came down from New York to direct it. At the time I was teaching at the College of Charleston, and I was taking the train down every weekend for rehearsals and then going back to Charleston doing rewrites for the next week. So the Rollins experience was very important in the development of that play. I was able to write some new scenes and make a lot of edits and changes. And so the published version has the Rollins students listed as one of the 2 original casts, as kind of a thank you to them for their work in development.
You have worked many times with Eric Nightingale, apparently one of your favorite directors to work with. I understand the relationship between a director and a playwright, as well as I understand the relationship between a good director and an actor. You fall in love and feel safe with a good director because they, I think in some ways, make you question things that you wouldn't.
I'd like to readdress that word. I don't feel safe with him. I feel brave with him.
Oh, brave. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because if I'm safe with a director, it means they're not challenging me.
Okay, that's what I really meant.
Yeah.
Supported.
Yes.
Supported so that you can take the risks that you might not take otherwise.
Yeah, and we're going to be truthful with each other. It's really like a good marriage.
Oh, that's wonderful, because I have one director that I'm thinking about, a woman who has directed me in probably 12 shows, and I trust her implicitly. And when I say, I can't do this or I'm tired, she goes, well, so is the character. Use it, You
mentioned, the amount of research, and then sometimes a play just kind of comes out of you. And Last Train to Nibrock was that play. I didn't do research on that play because it was based on a lot of family stories that I had heard my whole life. And if I did have a question about something, I would, one individual thing, I would look it up or talk to a family member. It was.
Talk about Nibrock, Beth, because it is the little play the little train that just keeps going and going and going, and segue into the trilogy, if you will.
Well, Last Train to Nibrock was my first full-length play. It started as one act, and then I just wrote some more scenes, and that premiered at the New York Fringe Festival in '97. Then we took it to Edinburgh in '99. It played off Broadway in '99, and has just been. There've been over 300 productions around the country. It's a little romantic comedy, really. It's just two actors, and you can do it with just a bench. It's actually getting a lot of productions now because it's very romantic, but they never touch or kiss, so the actors can be socially distanced.
I bet it would be easy to produce it in a Zoom format.
Yeah, it has been, and streaming. A number of theaters are doing that right now. And it happens to be the last production that I saw, the last professional production I saw before the pandemic. When Broadway shut down, I had just flown back from seeing it at Mad Cow Theater in Orlando.
Here, right?
Yeah, lovely production. I'm very thankful to Mitzi for producing it. Yeah.
Well, and I remember you saying to me that the young man who played the young man was extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And you've seen so many productions of your own play. It must be interesting to see how different directors and different actors, does it affect the play itself?
Well, it's, the audience laughs at the same things usually and feels the same emotions, but it's exciting that sometimes I learn things about the play I didn't know were there. A director will find a moment that I had no idea was there. At Mad Cow, which was exciting, was the venue itself, that it was done with the audience on two sides, and I'd never seen that before. And it was just beautifully staged. The blocking was really, really wonderful. So that was fun to see. I apologize. I'm totally blank on the name of that wonderful director at Mad Cow.
Oh, Mark Edward Smith.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've worked together many times. Okay. What is your favorite thing about working with student actors and artists, really? Because you're working with designers and lighting designers and technicians and actors and costumers, all of it. And now that you've had this experience on many different levels. I mean, you've done it at Rollins twice. You've worked at other colleges where I'm sure you're working with students. What is that like for you?
Well, a couple things. First of all, most of my plays have been written to go to Edinburgh or for very small theaters in New York. So they're very simple. You can load all the props and costumes in your suitcase to go to Edinburgh. So when I get to work at a university or college, they've got a lot of bells and whistles. It's so fun to have all the lighting and beautiful set design, and so that's just really fun. I love developing plays, working on new plays with students, because they are so honest about their response to the work, both vocally, what they think of it, and also subconsciously in their ability to perform. If I'm in New York, I can get some of the best actors in the country or in the world to do a reading of my play, and it sounds amazing. But college students, they're not going to make the play better than it is. And so there's a truthfulness in what comes out of them that if it's a good scene, it's going to work. And if it's not a good scene, it's revealed to me that it's not a good scene. It's like, Fiddler on the Roof, one of the best productions I ever saw, was done by sixth graders. Fiddler on the Roof always works.
Yes, it's a perfect play.
It's a great story, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so a good scene will work even with beginning acting students.
Yeah. And what is the most common question that a student will ask you as a playwright?
Some of the questions you've asked me, right. Why do you have two names? Where do you get your ideas from? I think what surprises them the most in development is how much rewriting I do, and how important it is that I have to hear it read, and then the next day I come in with a new scene or a revised scene or something in the scene that has come out of their response to it. They have said, well, this doesn't make sense to me, and then the next day there's a rewrite, and suddenly that,
it does. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest surprise for students, that they, and for a lot of people, they think that, we just type our plays and here it is, and now you do it. Whereas new play development is a huge part of the process. And so what was fun about As It Is in Heaven is it was the 20th anniversary of the play. So I changed a couple lines, but not much. So it was really fun to direct a play that wasn't in development.
And I think we should talk about this now for a second, because we discussed that we would. This is the first time this play was staged with masks because of the pandemic. And
yeah, we should have done a revival of as Imaginary Invalid.
Well, that's true. Boy, was that hard. But you, Beth Lincks, are a survivor of COVID-19, and it's kind of you said this the other day, sort of a PSA, a public service announcement to help people in the theater understand. I think you should talk about this more than me. Just tell me about your experience with COVID and how it impacted doing a play at Rollins.
Well, my fever started March 23rd, so it was very early on. Nobody I knew had COVID. There was so little we knew about it at that point. We weren't really wearing masks yet, or just starting to. And no, I don't know where I got it. It may have been flying back from Florida. And then, so I was alone in a studio apartment for 10 days with very high fevers and just like the worst flu you can possibly imagine. And then started coughing, coughed up blood. I was on video visits with my doctor every couple of days, but you weren't allowed to go to emergency room at that time unless you had a temperature over 102 and couldn't breathe. But by April 2nd, I couldn't catch my breath, and I did end up in the emergency room. I was then sent home at midnight, I think probably because they didn't have a room for me, because they had said they were going to put me in a room. My oxygen level was dangerously low. but they sent me home with oxygen, and then I was on oxygen at home for a couple of weeks with video visits. And so I credit my doctor with sending me at the right time, and New York Presbyterian Hospital, which, being in the emergency room on April 2nd was like a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
There were people lined up in the corridors on beds. I can't even tell you. It was almost like that scene in Gone with the Wind, where you just see,
bodies and bodies and bodies and bodies.
Yeah. And people moaning and on ventilators in the hallway, and just unbelievable. So I was actually glad that I got sent home. Mm-hmm. But it's been a long recovery. I still have fatigue. I still have a lot of underlying issues from COVID. I had COVID pneumonia, was what mine was. And so COVID is real. And I think now it's 12 people I know who died. People I know personally, and then probably 4 dozen who have had it some serious. So that's my say.
And it's horrible, and I'm so glad you survived it. And yet, I think what people don't understand is that the fatigue attached to getting better from COVID is so immense. You told me there were times when you could hardly get up to just get half a glass of juice, and then you had to get back in bed. Mm-hmm. So now suddenly we're back in Florida. You're wearing 2 masks, and you're in the Annie Russell, and you are directing a play with young, are social distancing to a pretty good degree, I thought, in that production. But they're wearing masks, and that I thought was handled really well. I understood every word that everybody said, and I was seated almost in the loge. So I think it's a challenge that we can overcome. But I want to know what you think the future holds in terms of post-pandemic, or even as long as we're still in it, because we are. What hopes do you see for the future of the theater?
Well, I think all the actors are getting really, really good at self-taping. So I think we're going to do some really good auditions in the future.
Right.
It's been a crossroads of a lot of different things happening, not just COVID. And so I think when we get to what I call the after times, or what a lot of people call the after times, I think it's going to be a new roaring 20s. I think there's going to be an explosion of creativity, which is already happening, and change. And much like it was in the 1920s, which is, when women got the right to vote, where there were, we had Eugene O'Neill, we had all kinds of amazing writers. So I think it's going to be very exciting. And I think everybody has been kind of
bottled up,
and it's going to explode, and it's already exploding. I mean, there's some extraordinary things happening on screen. And then there's a lot of things where what I say, we're all amateurs, where, we'll see some, big Broadway people trying to do a fundraising gala, and everybody's frozen. And they're not even as good as a high school trying to present so we're all amateurs right now. And there's something exciting about that. And this had all come right in the middle of Black Lives Matter and white American theater. We see you. So there's been a real exploration of what stories we want to tell in the future, and how we can be more inclusive of the stories that we tell. And I have to tell you, the students I worked with on As It Is in Heaven were so brave and creative and committed. And I really have such hope for this generation, because they've all been through a shared experience, and they have all suffered, and they have all had to rely on each other and on their families in a whole different way. And I think it's really exciting what's going to come out of all this.
Well, from your mouth, because I think we need an artistic explosion. I think we I think we have to react to not just the pandemic, but the political landscape and Black Lives Matter, all of it. Me Too. I mean, it all sort of was like a big ugly bubble, 2020. And now that we're at least past the orange part of it, we can move on. But I still think we're a long way from being two actors on a stage, touching, speaking, embracing, all the things that are told in so many stories.
Well, I always say that restrictions make us more creative. If I have to write a play where I know the size of the theater, I know I have to put it on an airplane and take it overseas, the more restrictions I have, the more fun it is solving that puzzle.
That's true. That's wonderful. Well, let's see. Is there any questions coming in that we would... Hi, Lee Jameson. Priscilla Crawford, her granddaughter was Betsy in As It Is in Heaven. A lot of people are saying they're so happy to see you and us, actually.
Your names on the chat, yeah. There was something you brought up that we didn't finish, that Last Train in Nibrock turned into a trilogy.
Right, that's what I wanted to talk about.
And I love those characters so much that I was encouraged by a number of people to keep writing for them. So I wrote a second play, and I was writing that one while I was going through a divorce. So it didn't have a happy ending. It kind of had an ambiguous ending. And so then I had to write a third play. So
which one is the second play? Sea Rock City?
Sea Rock City.
And then the third play is Gulfview Drive, right?
The third play, Gulfview Drive, takes place in near Sarasota, Florida in the 1950s.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we're getting closer to, the time when you were a child.
Yes.
I mean, a real child.
Yeah.
I loved all three plays. And what I really loved about them was that you saw, when you write a trilogy, it's like a novel, or more than a novel, a saga or an epic, because you can see people change from their naivety and young selves into people who are dealing with real issues. I believe epilepsy is an issue in the play. And then it travels through to unhappiness in a marriage. It's an amazing thing. Has anyone produced all three? Has a theater produced all three?
There's been about a half dozen theaters that have done all three, and some of them have done 3-show days, which is really fun.
You mean first play, second play, third play?
Yeah, first play and a like a half-hour break. The first two plays are about 90 minutes, and then the third play is a full 2 hours. So then they take a full dinner break and come back. It's really fun. It's magical in those 3-show days. But most recently, Rubicon Theater in Ventura, California, wonderful equity theater, who's doing some online programming as well, if people are interested. They produced the entire trilogy over 3 seasons. And the third play won the Ovation Award for Best Production in LA, up against the Geffen Theater and Center Theater Group, up against big ones, yeah. And those 3 productions are online at digitaltheater.com, which is a British company, and they were the first American plays to be selected by that company. So you can see the entire trilogy online on digitaltheater.com.
Let's see, Janelle Stover.
Yeah, Janelle, I don't know if I lost my sense of smell and taste. I was so sick. I was sleeping 22 hours a day. I didn't change clothes for a week. I think I probably lost it, or else I would have been able to smell something. But I wasn't aware of losing it. So, and I'm not in the medical profession, so I can't really talk much about that. But I do have a sense of smell and taste now.
Oh, good.
Hey, Alexa, we have a shout out from the woman who played Salah when we did Letters to Salah, and she was just one of the best Salahs ever.
So here's a question from Chelsea Swearingen. Any ideas for new plays or any plays in development right now?
Yeah, I have a couple plays in development. One was in the middle of a Rolling World premiere when COVID hit, and so some of the Chicago premiere and the Seattle premiere didn't happen. It's a commission from the Big Bridge Theater Consortium, which is a consortium of 12 faith-based colleges that every 2 years commission a play that deals with peace and world understanding. And the play I wrote for them is The Shakers of Mount Lebanon will hold a peace conference this month, which is based on a group of Shaker women in 1905 in Mount Lebanon, New York, not far from where Maggie Delgado and Bill Shepard live, and Robbie Strohmeyer, a famous lighting designer who was a Rollins alum. These women got together and put together a peace conference and then took a list of resolutions to Teddy Roosevelt in the White House. 9 months later, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So it's about a community of Shakers. This play has men and women in it, although more women than men in the cast. And they're dealing with the foreign neighbors on the other side of the fence. And the North family is liberal and progressive. This is all fact-based. This is all true. The Northern family, Shakers are divided into family groups. And the South family is very conservative. And there's a lot of friction between the two of them. And so that was a really fun play to write.
And I believe that village is still there, the one in Mount Lebanon.
Yes, it is.
And I think, didn't Maggie's daughter get married there?
She got married at a different Shaker village in Hancock Shaker Village in the Berkshires. Yeah.
Right, Hancock Shaker Village. It's just so beautiful there.
The famous round stone barn. Yeah. Yeah.
We're back.
Hi. Well, I thought that hearing about, the Beth's plays in development and the future for her specifically and the future for us in general just a few moments ago was a good place to sort of wrap us up. Unless there are lingering questions in the chat, definitely bring those on. Thank you so much. The time flew listening to the two of you, and thanks so much for the insight and the vulnerability and it's just great to hear from you.
And I just want to thank Rollins College for putting on the play in the first place, for bravely, getting back into the theater. And we took every precaution. We were really, really good at spacing. And I even yelled at one of the faculty members one day when I thought he got a little too close.
Oh, we have one more good question. Speaking of Rollins, my friend and colleague.
What advice might I give to an aspiring playwright? To write, just to write, to start writing. Find your tribe. Actors will always read your play for you for pizza. So invite. I have to hear a play to know what I've written, and so there's so much more theater in Orlando than there was when we were at Rollins. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Rollins did summer theater. But now there's so much more theater, places to develop it. Make it happen for yourself. I would say as a playwright, I've been a self-producing playwright now for 25 years. But keep writing, and take my class at the Barrow Group in New York City, because now that we're living in Zoom land, you can take classes anywhere.
I'll say something also about Rollins.
Please.
The department, when Beth and I were there, was extraordinary. Three of the teachers came from Yale. We were treated like a professional theater company, not like a college, not like college majors. We were treated like professionals, and we therefore learned professionalism. And I don't think any of us knew how much until years later, when we connect the way Beth and I do occasionally, and Maggie and Bill and all of us, Janice Hirsch. I mean, there's so many people from our era who went on to have totally successful careers in the industry, and many in different ways than we ever thought they would.
Well, I certainly owe my costume career and the small pension I now get to Mary Amland in the costume shop. And I ran the box office. I was the assistant business manager. And so all those skills came in handy when I started producing in Edinburgh. And I owe all that theater management background to Steve Nielsen, who was there at that time. And so it was doing everything that enabled a lot of us to find careers.
Absolutely. Anyway, and it's still just the most beautiful jewel box of a theater in the whole country, I think. The Annie Russell is so special.
And
so
I do, I mean, I'm incredibly biased and, speaking on brand here, but a brand I love. And I do think so much of that entrepreneurial spirit and professionalism and that liberal arts ethos where you're encouraged to explore and do a bit of everything is still very much alive in our department, and bolstered by conversations with our tribe. I'm so lucky to count myself amongst your Annie family.
And the last thing I want to say is, what would we have done the last year without Netflix and Hulu and all those shows? And where do those people find their passion? The actors, the directors, the people, the crew, the writers, the producers, they found their passion in theater in high school and college. And I just despair when programs are shut down or not supported. We live in a country that doesn't support the arts, but yet when the pandemic hit, it was the arts that just sustained us and kept us going.
It's absolutely true. And I think a lot of this is going to change now. Politically, we have a friend in power who I think is going to help, at least for the next 4 years. Let's see what happens. But
yeah, Kamala's terrific, isn't she?
I am so hopeful for this Roaring 20s, and very much liking to hear your predictions, Beth. I'm so grateful for your time. You spoke about Rollins getting back into the theater, and I would be remiss if I didn't plug one more opportunity to head to the Annie. If you're in the Central Florida area, we are doing Raise You Up Women in Musical Theater. It's a musical review that is 100 years of women at the helm on the creative team of a musical. So songs from early 20th century works all the way up to Kinky Boots, which is where our title came from. It has been compiled by faculty and students. Again, during this wild year, we were going to do a much larger show. It was on the books, but it wasn't safe. So we had to switch gears and create this one. So we'd love for you to join us. It's April 9th through 17th, and of course, incredibly limited seats. So I think we will, certainly just like we did with As in Heaven, have to turn folks away. So snag tickets now. And if you want to know what's going on at the Annie with our second stage series over our improv troupe, go ahead and email boxoffice@rollins.edu, and you'll get in the loop on our email newsletters. That's it from me. Anything else from you all?
Thanks again to Rollins, to the president, to the faculty, and most of all to the students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to the Office of Alumni Engagement for making the video happen and for gathering us together here today. We appreciate all your hard work.
And everybody who supports the Annie with their donations and their presence. Thank you.
Yes, we like that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great chatting with y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye.